Alrighty, Jake Stuart with the National Sports Media Association. Today, I'm joined by Kate Scott, the California Sportscaster of the Year. Kate, thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure to be here, Jake. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I wanted to start off by, talking a little bit about your background because it's very, very exciting. You call for the Pac-12 network, and I was very, very pumped to know that you were the first woman to call an NFL game in the radio. The Pac-12 networks and play-by-play for the first ever all-female NHL broadcast. That's so awesome.
Thank you so much for saying that. And yeah, they were incredibly awesome moments. They were terrifying in lead up, right? Because it's always scariest kind of when you're walking to the edge of the plane before you actually jump out of it.
Right.
But I know I wouldn't be here in Philly now working for this team if I hadn't powered through that fear, if I hadn't gotten those opportunities, if I hadn't gotten through those challenges and been able to prove to myself that I can do that and I can do this and I can be here. So yeah, a number of just awesome. I think that was the word you used a couple moments ago, moments in my career that helped me get to where I am today.
Well, I wanted to go back in time a little bit and ask you, what brought you into this industry in the first place?
Yeah, that is a great question because even though it's only been a little over 20 years since I graduated from high school, I was not planning to go to college and be a sports broadcaster because there were so few women 20 years ago in 2001 doing this as a career. When I think back to the women I saw on TV growing up, I can count them on pretty much one hand. It was Robin Roberts and Linda Cohn anchoring Sports Center. I saw Bonnie Bernstein and Leslie Visser and Andrea Kramer doing Sideline, and Michelle Tafoya and Hannah Storm and a few others were just starting to get exposure. But I never put two and two together until, thankfully, Mr. Schmazel, one of my advisors in high school, stopped me on my way to the office one day as I was getting ready to put my college applications in the mail. And he asked what I wanted to do and what I was planning to major in college. And I said, well, I think I'm going to get my teaching credential because I want to impact the next generation. My mom's a teacher. A lot of my friends are going to be. And he said, well, Kate, that's obviously great. I've made a career in education, but just want to point out to you, you play 4 varsity sports. You're our sports editor for a high school newspaper. You're on the microphone leading cheers at Friday night football games. You're the PA announcer for our men's soccer team. Why don't you think about maybe making that a career? Microphone, writing, sports.
Right.
And I said, Mr. Schmazel, that's a great idea. But it truly wasn't until that moment, my junior year of high school, when I even started thinking about this, even in generalities. But then thanks to that conversation, I went to Cal, majored in communications, started doing internships in television and did an internship in radio right after I graduated, fell in love. And now here I am.
That's such a cool story. I love, just hearing the origins of how this all started and you're continuing it on and keep
Mr. Schmazel and I are still in
touch.
touch. That is the coolest thing. We were actually texting earlier in the week and feeling old because we've known each other for a very long time.
Wow. Well, I wanted to ask you, what would you say, what does this award mean to you?
Oh gosh. I don't know even where to begin to explain what this award means to me. Just before we were talking, I clicked on the list of the previous winners of this award, and Chick Hearn and Vin Scully and Greg Papa and all the guys I listen to in the Bay Area, Mike Krukow and Dwayne Kuiper and Dave Fleming and Bill King. And it is a list of legends. So to now be a part of this list, it is incredibly humbling. It is quite an honor. And it inspires and motivates me to know that some folks out there in this industry felt that I was worthy of being on a list with those incredible broadcasters. So I'm just going to get back to work, Jake, and do my best to prove that I belong on that list and hopefully make a lot of people proud, as I know they have for years to come.
Yeah, for sure. I know you kind of already mentioned one of your mentors, your former high school teacher, but who would you say, as a sportscaster or commentator growing up that really inspired you as well?
Oh, wow. Well, some of the guys that I just named, being a California kid, Bill King and Dwayne Kuiper and Mike Krukow and Dave Fleming, as I started to get a little bit older, John Miller. I mean, I was raised a Bay Area sports fan because I grew up in the middle of California, Fresno, Clovis. So depending on who your parents root for, that's kind of what portion of California so I knew Vin and Chick, but I obviously hated everything they were always talking about. So really it was the Bay Area voices for me that I listened to on the radio as my dad and I were driving, trying to get 680 AM, and then watching television. Sports weren't on as much as they are now. It wasn't an every game and every night thing, but anytime I would hear those voices, Kruk and Kipe and Miller and Flem, it felt like home. And they were the soundtrack to my childhood and my teen years. And now I'm looking forward to getting the chance to be that for a lot of folks here in Philly.
Right. Obviously, you're already becoming that voice, and clearly you've been a part of some pretty awesome events and game coverage. Would you say, is there like, I know we've already mentioned a couple, but is there one event or a few events or just a moment for you that kind of stands out with your coverage?
Yeah. Wow, there has been so much. You mentioned that I was at the PAC12 Network before coming out here to Philly, and getting to call Fran Believey's first collegiate dunk last year or the year prior.
She actually went to my high school too. She was
okay.
Awesome.
There you go. So
I called her first high school dunk. She's awesome.
I love that. I'm so glad I brought that up. But it was one of those moments where we all knew she'd been dunking in practice, but you never know if that moment's going to come in a women's basketball game, because it's not as easy as the 6'7" dudes out there.
Right,
so
right.
I need to call that. And then the game that it was in was Tara Vanderveer tying Pat Summitt for the most wins as a D1 women's college basketball coach. So that whole night was incredibly special. And then you mentioned the hockey game for NBC. I'd never called hockey before at any level. I thought they were flipping crazy to ask me to do it, but the way they explained it to me was great, because I pushed back saying, is this a publicity stunt? I don't want to suck at this and set our gender back 25 years. And they said, no, Kate, everybody else has been doing their roles on NHL broadcasts for years. We just don't have any women who are doing play-by-play, but we see you as a play-by-play broadcaster, the same way that Al Michaels had never called hockey before the '80 Olympics. We just knew that he was a play-by-play announcer, and if we gave him the time, he would prep his tail off and he'd be ready. And we expect the same of you. And that gave me the confidence to say yes to that assignment. And then being in the United Center, calling Blues Blackhawks, there's a zillion things I wish I would have done better. I wish my goal calls would have been better. I think that's what you always are. You're relentlessly self-critical as a broadcaster, but making it through that broadcast proved to me that what NBC said was right, that I am a broadcaster now. And that really gave me the confidence to complete and I think do pretty well at my most recent assignments, getting to call a national college football package with Mike Golick for Learfield in the fall. That was so much fun. And now being here with the Sixers. So those are a couple of moments that I'm going to remember for a long time.
Wow. Well, I wanted to switch gears maybe just a little bit. I know, over the past few, I guess, years now, COVID has kind of hit us. And I would just think that, being that you've done so many different games in a variety of different sports, you come off as a very versatile person. Can you speak to that a little bit and how, maybe COVID's changed your work, but also how you've been able to adapt with it?
Yeah. I was one of the probably hundreds of thousands of sports broadcasters who questioned if my career was over when the pandemic hit. The hockey game that we referred to happened the Sunday before the Thursday that the world shut down. So all of us said for the first year, can you imagine if this would have happened the following Sunday? The hockey game never would have come to be. Who knows how my career would have changed? But then, as we all know, everything fell silent. The Pac-12 was the one conference that decided not to play football in the fall of 2020. So all of a sudden, I was without a job and had to pay my mortgage in the San Francisco Bay Area. So my versatility allowed me to stay in this industry because in addition to calling games, I'd done sports radio for a number of years in San Francisco. And it just so happened that 95.7 The Game was looking to launch a new morning show, and they were interested in having me be one of the hosts. So getting back to that word you mentioned, versatility, that helped until sports came back. And then the first sport, of course, that I was asked to call was hockey, which was not obviously the sport that I've been calling the longest, but NBC said, hey, we're going to air some women's hockey. We'd love for you to be the voice. Okay. And then all of a sudden Fox was calling and was offering me the opportunity to call some international soccer in LA. Yeah, let's do it. Definitely. And then one thing led to the next. And then sports started to kind of return to normal. But really early in my career, Jake, somebody told me the more you can do, the harder you are to fire. So make yourself, if they line 5 of you up, 5 broadcasters up on a wall, and they need somebody who calls soccer and basketball and can also call tennis and, like be the last one standing if that's possible. So I'm so glad I got that advice. And I also get bored easy, and I love all sports, not just basketball or soccer. I grew up playing everything and watching everything. So I just feel very fortunate to have followed that advice, have been versatile, and have been lucky to call so many incredible events over the years as a result.
Right. I love that advice that now you're imparting onto people as well, and these listeners. And the last question I wanted to ask you is off of that. Is there one other piece of advice you'd give for younger sportscasters, somebody just stepping onto the stage now?
Just one of my favorite quotes, Jake. I actually came across it in high school. It's a Peruvian proverb, and it's little by little, one walks far. Because I remember being your age, getting ready to graduate from Cal, thinking, oh my gosh, I'm ready to crush this. ESPN is going to be knocking on my door. I'm going to be a national superstar, and I'm going to be 23 years old. Well, I'm 38. I have yet to call anything for ESPN, but I'm now NBC Sports Philly's voice of the 76ers. So I think things have worked out okay. But I think there's just kind of this idea that there's going to be a big break. And for some people, there is, whether it's through connections, whether it's right place, right time, whether it's luck. But I was not that person. I started as a radio traffic producer. I wasn't even on the air, let alone covering sports, until I was 4 years into my post-collegiate career. And then I got the chance to host Cal's post-game football show when people were stuck in traffic in their cars on the way home from another, probably Cal loss. But, it's taken me a lot of very small steps to get here. So that's my advice. The old cliche is there's no elevator to success. So I think this is just another way of saying it. Enjoy every experience. I've had so many great times. I've met so many great people, and I wouldn't be here without their help. If I hadn't worked that season for the San Jose Giants, if I hadn't worked those 3 years for the San Jose Earthquakes, I don't know if I'd be here and be as prepared as I feel like I am tonight. So keep at it, kids. It is such a fun industry. And just remember, little by little, one walks far.
Little by little. Well, that's sure a big award you won, Kate. Thank you so much for your time today. California Sportscaster of the Year. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Jake. It's been an honor.